Brent Pope, you are so welcome to the Happier at Work podcast. I'm so privileged to have you on the show today. And I think for me, anyone who's listening in Ireland probably knows the name. I'm not sure people
No.
beyond Ireland would be familiar too much with you. Do you want to tell people a little bit about who you are, what your background is, and what got you into what we're talking about today?
I suppose that's the question. Who are we? Um, Basically, a quick synopsis. I grew up in New Zealand, a smallish rural country town called Ashburton. Anybody that knows New Zealand, it's about 50 miles south of Christchurch on the road to Dunedin. Um, I had a Huckleberry Finn lifestyle growing up, always surrounded by animals, living out of town, plenty of land, playing every sport. Those were the days when your mother would kick you out on a Saturday at 8 o'clock and you wouldn't come in till late at night, swimming and taking tire tubes down the river and, skiing in the winter and surfing, and had some great friends. Loved my life, close network with my brother Mark and my family of one brother. So yeah, I look back on those days with real fond memories of a life well lived at that age. I was actually born a pretty sickly child. My mother always told me that I would amount to something because she said you shouldn't have been alive, because I was born with the umbilical cord around my throat,
Oh,
and
wow.
I had double pneumonia and bronchitis, and I always used to be that kid at school with the whooping cough,
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
and I was a bad asthmatic, and I remember I used to have to go and see a doctor a couple of times a week in Christchurch to do all these breathing exercises. But such was the lifestyle in New Zealand those days, getting out in nature and running around. And I grew out of that when I was in my teenage years. But other than that, I used to get every flu going. I'd always have a cold, especially. But I suppose my mental health problems started when I was in my teenage years, and it started with panic attacks or anxiety attacks. And people always ask what the trigger was, and I have to say that there's not always a trigger. For me,
Yeah.
it wasn't always event driven. It wasn't like I had no worries in my life at that stage, but I just used to get. I used what I call my Gatling gun, and my Gatling gun to me was just this machine gun of negative thoughts. That I'll fail at everything I do, even though I was succeeding, but that I'll never find a happy place. And
Mm.
somewhat ironically, I remember a few years ago, I found a book that I kept up in the attic, and I bought the book when I was, I think, 15 years of age, and the book was When Will I Be Happy? And I thought that's a weird book for someone to buy at that age, because
Yeah.
I thought I was abnormal.
Mm.
I just thought that all these feelings of kind of negativity in all aspects of my life, I just thought this is not normal. Then I would get the physical manifestations of panic attacks and the not being able to breathe and thinking that I was dying. And I remember, even involving God at one stage, sort of saying, "Are you taking me now?" That's what it used to feel like to me.
Mm.
I'd look up to the heavens and say, am I dying here? Is that what it's, so they're quite extensive. But like a lot of people in mental health, I masked those years
Yeah.
right through to when I had, when I moved into the more sinister mental health issues. I masked it as the class clown, as the people that,
Mm.
had a lot of friends and was smiling all the time. And but that wasn't what was going on. I was kind of living a lie, not in the personality term. I don't live a lie in the personality that I'm, not fun to be around and I can get on. It was just I was masking my sort of coming out with these difficulties. I couldn't tie what I tell everybody. It's that's why I have a bit of a problem with the word wellness when it involves mental health, because I knew all about physical wellness from my sport playing days. As you know, my background is I played rugby at a really high level, and I was a good rugby player, but I couldn't tie the physical fitness and well-being to my mental well-being, and I couldn't get help in those days because everybody I went to see for help always brought it back to the physical.
Mm.
Always said,
Okay.
weren't you player of the match last week, Brent? Or, doesn't everybody in the city know who you are? You're a fabulous rugby player. You're living the charmed life or the dream
Mm.
life. you have a beautiful partner, we've seen you out and about, you have a successful business, all those things, yes, on the outside. But I just couldn't cope with the pressure, I couldn't cope with the anxiety, I couldn't cope with the negativity, and there was no one to go to. I couldn't go to anyone for help. I couldn't reach out for help, you know. But so that's really, in a long way. Then it became really concerning. Then I got to a stage where I just couldn't manage it on my own, and I was desperate for help. And my thoughts on mental health in those days was that if I had been, well, I would have thought. Now I know I would have been brave enough, but in those days I thought if I was stupid enough to reach out and say, admit myself to a psychiatric care or whatever like that, my visions were one flew over the cuckoo's nest. That's what mental health looked like to me.
Yeah.
I thought I'd make the front pages of the paper next day that top rugby player is insane, or all those sort of images of straitjackets, of frontal lobotomies and all that. And people laugh about that now, but that was very much the way in New Zealand back 40 years ago or 45 years ago. That was what people's images of. I remember spending some Sundays with my mother. My mother had a friend that was in a psychiatric ward, and it was up in Christchurch, and the place was surrounded by barbed wire, and it had very much a prison feel to it. And that was a scary place to put yourself. So I just unraveled. I couldn't go to any of my friends because I'd be seen as weak as a man. Because I grew up in a macho world where real men, don't cry and man up and toughen up and harden up and tough it out and all these things that I was told to me. But they were all coming from a physical point of view, not a mental point of view. It was easy to say muscle up and harden up when you're going into a rugby tackle. I was an aggressive, hard-nosed rugby player, and it was fine. I could transfer that easily into a tackle or whatever like that and get up and go again. I just couldn't transfer those skill set to my mental health, to look after my mental health. So since that time, I then, I still deal with shame, and I still deal with judgment, and I still deal with those things every day. So then probably, I couldn't get the help, and then I had what, I don't even like to use this term. I'd rather call it an emotional breakdown. But I had a breakdown in my late 20s where I just I become very isolated. I wanted to lock myself away from friends. I didn't want to go out anymore. I didn't want to see anybody. I just sat in my room. I pulled the blinds, as I effectively say, I pulled the blinds to my life. I didn't want to play rugby anymore. I left my job. I broke up with a partner. I was going downhill to such an extent that I just didn't. I didn't really. I couldn't see how I could get out of it, because there was still something inside of me that wanted that help and knew I needed help. I just couldn't get it. Who could I turn to? People say, "Oh, it wasn't as easy as talking to your father or something, because he was an old-fashioned, really kind and beautiful man, but his role in those days was to put food on the table, and he worked 3 jobs to do it, and it wasn't really his role to kind of give that. He wouldn't have known where to start. Like I know he loved me, and I loved him, and mum too, and she loved me, and I love her, but it was just something that I was ashamed to go to them for. I felt shame that I couldn't put this, that they had this idea of who I was, and who I was a success on the rugby field. Everybody knew Popey, and I was writing kids' books and doing all things like that just personified me as probably a successful guy that was doing great things with his life. So I felt the shame of saying, do I have to tell my parents now that's not who I am? And in fact, I'm a failure in my eyes. Even though I wasn't. People can feel failure even though they're achieving great things, because it's not about that. It's not about the extrinsic values that people place on success, which is making money, having a nice house, having a nice car. All those things we can see. What we can't see is what people think about themselves. And I was very much alone in this battle. I was scared. I was terrified. I couldn't get help, but I didn't think a lot of myself.
Mm.
You know, I didn't have much self-confidence. I didn't have much self-belief um, that I would ever be able to achieve anything, even though I was.
Do you think it made it more difficult because of this outward perception? So you had this perception of, wow, isn't he
Yeah,
phenomenally successful? But there's a real disconnect between how people perceive you and how you perceive
yeah,
yourself, which makes it more difficult to reach out for
absolutely.
help because it shatters that illusion.
Well, then we go back to the first question you asked:
Mm,
who am I? Because
yeah.
you start to doubt to know who you are really,
Yeah.
and that's taken a lifetime to try to get to a position where who am I? Who is the real Brent Pope? Who is the real Popey? Is he that affable, easygoing, fun to be around guy
Mm,
that I portrayed, or is he in fact that person that suffers a bit and well,
yeah.
suffers a lot actually? I'm
Mm,
sort of playing that down too. That suffers a lot because that all comes into the judgment circle. You know,
mm,
what you think about yourself is most important. You know, and even in the workplace, I say to people at management level and that look after yourself first because only then can you look after people. I
yeah.
wasn't very good at looking after myself. If somebody told me love myself first, I'd say that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
Give the
Yeah.
love
Yeah.
out, give the love out, but don't take. And I self sabotage, and that
Mm,
came into my life as well. Any relationship that would have been good for me, I just thought I wasn't worthy. You know, even though people would say to me, you know, that they cared about me and all that, I would back away because it was just getting too close to the bone for me. You know,
mm,
what if
yeah.
they discovered the real me? What if they didn't
Mm,
like what they saw?
yeah. Yeah.
What if my rugby teammates, saw this as a weakness? And what if I went to them on a Thursday night at training and said, "Hey guys, I'm struggling a bit. Not on the rugby field. I'm just struggling a bit with my mental health." You know, uh, that would be letting them in too much. So you then go from that stage to feeling a burden. They don't want to hear about my problems anymore, or they don't want to listen to my problems. So then you become, you go the other way. You isolate yourself from friends and family, and you do it very much alone. And
Mm,
it's a thing I often say to people that sort of shakes them awake a bit. And I say, look, we all know when people suffer from addiction problems, and they'll always talk about getting to the lowest point in their life before they had to make changes. In the sense they'll talk about, look, I just got. I couldn't reach for another bottle of vodka in the morning. I just knew things had to change, but they had to get to the bottom first.
mm.
What I say about mental health is, unfortunately, if somebody gets to the bottom, 9 times out of 10, we've lost them already.
Okay. Yeah.
It's not as easy
We
to come
can't
back
let
from.
them get down
No,
to
we can't
rock
let them
bottom.
get down
Yeah.
to rock bottom, because at rock bottom they feel that it's the same thing that people always say to me, out there, oh, did you hear of so and so that took their own life? How could they be so selfish? How could they leave a wife behind or a partner behind and the kids and that? I keep saying to them, it's not because it's rational, it's because it's irrational, and
Yeah.
they're just stuck in a moment of time, that U2 song, stuck in a moment and can't get out of it. And they actually feel like I feel. They feel they're
Mm,
a
yeah.
burden to their families, a burden to themselves, a burden to society, a burden to everybody. So in fact, what they're thinking about at that stage is actually that people will be better off without them. And I know how that feels, because
Mm,
that's the way that I felt. I
yeah.
felt that when I ran out of hope, all I've tried to do for the last, 30 or 40 years is give people hope, give people to say, hey, I've been there and I know what that's like, because
Mm,
I sometimes pull my hair out when I go and hear these people speak, and I feel like saying, but how would you know? You're speaking out of a book, and that's fine.
mm,
And you put the science behind it, and that's fine too. And we all need that. But how would you know how it feels to be clinging on to life because of something so irrational to somebody else? We
mm,
could see it if somebody said, look, I've got a terminal disease or something, that's awful. But we can see it in people, and we can support them, and we can show them love and care. We don't see that with people with mental health. It's a
yeah.
silent killer. It's a
It's a
silent killer.
silent, yeah. Like you can't look at someone and be able to
No,
tell.
no,
Um, I'd love to go back to the teenage years and when you were having panic attacks. Did you know what the panic attacks
no.
were?
I thought I would
It's only
die.
looking back now
Yeah.
that you realize, oh my God, that was a panic attack.
I knew it was anxiety. That's
Yeah.
the funny word. And I didn't really
Mm,
know much about that word. But
yeah.
anxiety to me was sitting in a room by yourself watching The Exorcist or something.
Yeah, yeah,
That was
yeah.
anxiety. So I
Yeah.
knew it was a feeling of really severe anxiety, but it was just for me. It was that Gatling gun. It was for me. I pictured myself. I always used to draw things, and it was always funny enough. We'll talk about the elephant later. And it was always little old me on the end of a rope trying to pull an elephant, and the elephant was negative feelings, and there was me and the rope with the positive feelings.
Yeah.
And so I remember, well, I don't remember, but I must have read that book and said, look, pile positive feelings in and positive affirmations and all these things.
Mm.
But that wasn't enough. That couldn't
Yeah.
stop the tide. I was never winning the arm wrestle, as I put it. I was never
Yeah.
winning that. I was always losing. I was always, don't try that because you'll fail. You're a loser, Brent. You're alone. Nobody will care. Like, it used to go that far.
Mm.
And then I know the first time it happened, actually, it was in the bath for some reason. I was in the bath one Sunday night, and I just felt this. People talk about later in life, they told me about similar experiences, like a mist or something. Just this negativity, just like it kind of entered my psyche and never went
Yeah.
away.
Wow.
And I didn't have anything to worry about. It wasn't like I had exams or anything the next day.
Yeah.
And I remember not being able to breathe and going blue and shaking. And I got out of bath, and I remember lying on the bed in the sort of fetal position and kind of crying and thinking. That's when I thought, looking up to heaven, because I was brought up a Catholic, and I was brought up in the religious spring, looking up to my eyes to heaven and saying, God, are you taking me? That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
That
Yeah.
I was, that in that moment, that I was actually experiencing what death was like. Despite my age, that's
Yeah.
just
That's what it felt like.
that's what it felt like, because I
Yeah.
didn't understand what it
Yeah.
was.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
know that it was something different, and I know that it was something that I was powerless to try to stop. And that was a scary thing. It wasn't like I'd had plenty of it. I was always that type of kid that fell down and grazed his knee and jumped up again. I had a lot of injuries in sports, and all those.
Yeah. Yeah.
I kind of different.
Yeah. And when you finally had the courage to speak up about what was going on for you, what was the reception?
The reception was what I talked about before.
Mm.
It was always linked to the physical.
Oh yeah, of course.
Probably
Yeah. Yeah.
because I give credit in the sense that probably the doctors or the team doctors or whatever, they probably didn't know themselves.
Yeah.
They probably hadn't people coming in and like, I think a lot of people of that generation suffered from depression, anxiety. They just didn't understand.
Yeah.
And it was just a matter of going along the doctor putting them on whatever the drug of choice was at that stage, the old antidepressant, saying, oh, you're in a bit of a funk. Mine
Yeah.
was more than that. I
Yeah.
knew that this just wasn't a low period
Yeah.
in my life, because you don't ring your father. I rang my father after a rugby match in tears. You just picture a 17 stone, 6'3" man out in his dripping wet rugby gear, ringing his father, crying, say, Dad, come and pick me up. There's something wrong with me. There's
Yeah.
something wrong with me.
Yeah.
And that's the way that I felt. And that's not normal.
Mm.
If it was just, the breakup of a relationship, or just the missing out in the rugby team or something, fine. But see, we as men in particular, I'm not saying that is that women actually suffer more from depression, anxiety than men, but men suffer it at a different level.
Yeah.
There's more suicides in men. So that tells us one thing, that men don't deal with mental health the same way that women do. And I understand that now, because my approach was macho in the extreme. Push all your problems under the carpet, hope they'll go away, and yet not understand that they were just gathering steam to come back at a later day,
Yeah.
full court press. And that is the danger for men, is that all these problems, all this stress at work, all this, push it away, push it away, push it away, push it away. Man, my warning to those people is, deal with it then and there, because it can all come back to you. And then it can be what we say, then it can be just about too late, because
Yeah.
then it's a flood rather than a trickle.
Yeah.
I
And
didn't
it's
have
everything.
that, because,
It's everything at once.
it's everything
not,
at once.
It's not just a little bit of this here, a little bit of that
Looking
there.
back
It's
now,
everything, spiral.
looking back now, I wish that in my university years, I wish that there had been someone I could go and see in those years, because as a rugby star, which is what I was in my province, and not just the rugby. I'd written books, and I was very much front and center around any media advertising and that, because I was probably quite marketable as a player, and I get all that. But the higher I went up the kind of success chain, the harder it was to ask for help.
Yeah.
Because, and it makes sense now, because the judgment come along with it. If I could have seen somebody in university a few years before, when I wasn't so well known, I could have gone anonymously or whatever and had a chat to someone, and somebody pointed me in the right direction, then I think that would have saved me years of getting to the point whereby I thought I had no hope and there was no hope out there.
Yeah, that you have to
Because of,
conceal it for years and years.
mask
Yeah.
it, conceal it, mask it, put it away. Nobody wants to know. And as long as you're managing okay from the outside looking in, then people don't want to ask. I call it life's dirty little secrets. People ask me why I reveal my dirty little secrets, because that's what they were for me.
Yeah.
And people look back at me now and say, "Oh, we never knew, Brent." And I said, "Of course you didn't.
Yeah.
Of course you didn't."
Because I was masking, because I was
Yeah.
hiding it, because I was the life and soul.
Exactly.
I was the guy telling jokes with loads of friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also what I get. People will come to me all the time, and they'll talk about losing somebody they know in the community. And they say, but Brent, I saw him down at the golf club last week, or I saw him at the rugby club, and he was in great form. We shared a pint in that. And I said, yeah, because at some stage he's made up his mind that on a certain day and time, the hurt is going to stop. The hurt is going to stop in his life. And
Yeah.
sometimes when you get to that stage, you kind of, I don't like to say it, but sometimes people have made a decision that, they don't want to live in a world of hurt every day. It's like going over a relationship breakup every day of your life. It's so that's why I tell people, look, get it sorted early on, rather than, own up to who you are, I suppose, is the lesson. Own up and say, look, okay, part of your vulnerabilities or part of your bravery is who you are.
Yeah.
And speaking out about your mental health before it gets to my level is who you are.
Yeah.
And take that being as a personality trait that is actually wonderful, rather than weak. I always saw it as weakness, because I had to go down that line of what it takes to be a man, and what it took to be a man in my generation, especially coming from a rural background, and especially being involved in rugby, was to be the other side of machoism. The big tough rugby player that could handle himself physically, that was, say, the life and soul of the party, that had plenty of friends, that had, all these things that were deemed to be who you are when you really weren't.
Yeah.
So yeah, I lived a lie for so many years, and I'm not proud of it, but what else could I do?
Well, I suppose I'm curious about how you got to the stage where now you understand a lot more about what was going on, and you had the courage to start speaking up and sharing your vulnerabilities.
It's still not easy. And even today I was talking to, I still feel judged, but I made a decision. I kept this a secret. In fact, people think that the reason I came to Ireland in the first place was to play rugby, and to a certain degree it was. But the real reason was I had to get away from the environment when I felt judged.
Okay.
I had to get out. I made a life-changing call to the Samaritans one night. We won't, because I don't want to trigger anybody, but probably people can work out what the call was about.
Yeah.
I rang the Samaritans, and I'll always remember that's why I do things for the Samaritans, as much as I can, because I believe that phone call saved my life, or the direction of my life, and just that one conversation, because somebody cared. That was all it was. The guy picked up the phone. He said, "What's wrong, friend?" And he wasn't my friend. I'd never met him, but it was just this word and the tone.
Yeah.
of that
Made all the difference.
conversation,
Yeah.
and it got me professional help. And I say now I've had to have professional help ever since that time. But at
Mm.
least it was a step in the right direction, and at least it was somebody telling me, Brent, you can get over this. You can win this. It
Yeah.
may take time, and it may take the rest of your life, working away at it, but you can get through this. And that was the only time that anybody had told me that over what I started having anxiety attacks when I was 14 or 15. This happened when I was 27 or 28. So it was all those years in between
Yeah.
where I was really just struggling,
Mm.
and so then I came to Ireland, still not ready to talk about what was ailing me. Still went about with my life as being that guy that that I hope people enjoy his company, because I am easy to get along with. I am good
Mm.
fun, all those things. So
Yeah.
I don't have to have the one without the other. But then I hit a bit of a bump, for no reason. Well, there probably was a reason. But I just don't recall it now. And I went off to New York for a couple of months. I rented a place in Harlem, which I thought would be wonderful.
Mm.
Everybody loves New York, and especially me, because I love art galleries and I
Yeah.
love movies and all that. I thought I'm going to immerse myself in New York sort of culture and walk the park every day and do all these things. Movies and stuff. I was about 2 weeks there, and I suddenly felt very alone.
Mm.
Now, New York can be a lonely place.
Yeah.
When people look at you when you're going out to places to try to meet people. I'm not that type of person, despite having a gregarious enough kind of personality. It takes a while to get to know me. I'm actually quite a shy person when I go into, people will laugh as, oh, geez, yeah, but because you've been on TV. But that's
Yeah.
not who I am either.
Yeah.
So I found it very difficult to meet new people unless I met them through rugby or something like that. So, and I started to see symptoms then of what had happened to me a few years. So I started to sense that I started to isolate myself in New York. I started to lock the door and not go out at night and sit around, and spending a lot of time by myself and not calling anybody or not talking to anybody. And I just knew then the learnings from before was, Brent, you're in a bit of trouble here again,
Yeah. Mm.
Now I didn't know, again, a bit like New Zealand, I didn't know where I could get help in New York or even where to
Yeah.
start.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I flew back to Dublin, where I was seeing professional counsellors or whatever. And on the same day, I think somebody probably saw me getting off the plane, and I was invited into Ryan Tubridy's radio show to talk about the rugby match. Must have been a rugby match. It was before he was on the Late Late, so we're talking, I think maybe 16 or 17 years ago.
Mm.
He was only a young guy, just on the radio at that stage, and I was I always kept my word. If I said I would go on something, I did.
Yeah.
That's been part of, my father always taught me, always be on time and always, don't let anybody down. So even though I wasn't feeling particularly well, I thought, okay, I'll just be able to mask it like I had done on the TV and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And he took one look at me and he said, Brent, he said, there's something wrong with you,
Mm.
and suddenly I was in that, whether he caught me at a time, and I just started to kind of well up, and
Yeah.
my dirty little secrets just came out, and I couldn't
Yeah.
stop them. And
Yeah.
once the cork was taken out, I just said, Ryan, I'm suffering from mental health issues, and
Yeah.
this is not the first time, and I need help, and all these things.
Mm.
I went round the back of RT without a word of lie, and I thought my life was over and on. Why? Because I thought that, big macho guy on the telly doing the rugby,
Mm.
macho,
Yeah.
man's man. Well, can't he look after himself? Again,
Yeah. Mm.
real men don't cry.
Mm.
Man up, toughen up, harden up. All these things come back in, and thinking, what am I doing? And I thought, I won't be accepted. And Ryan rang me back about 10 o'clock in the morning. He said, Brent, he said, I've never seen anything like it. He said, the switchboards has just come on by with a lot of men around the country saying that's how they feel, and
Wow.
at least someone there's there to represent them. And suddenly it just made things a bit easier. And I decided on that day, as I've done since, that if I can affect change in somebody else's life, or in fact, if I can save somebody else's life and save somebody from going to the places that I went, then that is what I must do. That is
Yeah.
what I must do.
Mm.
Not that I have a choice, because sometimes it's difficult. And I've had to say to people, sometimes I get scarred when I'm out talking, because I like this interview, because I have to go back to those places that I don't really want to go back to. But I hope people realize I go back there for the benefit of the learnings that they take out of it, that they can look at someone and say, okay, if Brent can do it, then maybe I can too. And
Yeah.
that's always been the message to me. And it's always
Yeah.
been the message, especially to men, is that if he can do it at a place of natural platform, then maybe I can. Maybe I can make that first call like he had to. And I thought I would be, I thought I'd have been replaced years ago. I thought that somebody else would have come on the scene and spoken out about it. But it seems for years I was the only person sort of paddling a canoe.
Okay.
Like I know people come on the media, they come on, for a year or something, or 6 months, and say this, but I've kind of, in rap terms, I'm an OG, like I'm an old
Yeah.
gangster,
Yeah. Yeah. Love it. Love it.
that's been around the block. Since
Yeah.
that time, I've gone back and studied psychology. I'm a qualified psychotherapist, not for anything that I think that I'm able to be a counselor, because I don't think that's my trade, but just
Mm.
so I can combine the sort of science with the learnings with the experience part,
Yeah.
because I've
I
lived
love
it.
it. Yeah.
Then I had to learn what I have to do to recover from it. I know I'll be in this battle for my life. I know that I
Yeah.
have dips and troughs like everybody. The
Mm.
one thing that I set myself apart from when I'm talking to people, as I said, at least I know and recognize in myself when I have to make that call.
Yeah.
And that's the lesson in all of this. If there's one lesson that anybody takes out of this and other talks, is reach out when you're at that spot.
Yeah.
Please
Yeah.
reach out, because the alternative doesn't worth thinking about. And know that there is help out there if you can just get it. And I know that's
Yeah.
difficult. I know we're flooded with people coming back and saying they can't get teenagers into the service industry, or they can't get them to see anybody. But it's a case of saying, don't feel judged. See it as a positive personality trait, rather than for so many years I saw it as a negative.
Yeah.
Am I still there? No. So I
Mm.
can BS you all out there and say, look, I've got it right. No, there's still times, I go through those anxiety attacks. Even now, there's still times where I feel very, very down. There's still times I do that. But all I know now is, look, walk the walk, talk the talk. You've got to get working. Where are your resources? Where's your toolbox? What do you got to
Mm.
go to next? Is it medical intervention? Do I have to, ring friends on speed dial? Do I have to be medicated? Do I have to, talk to somebody about going in to be just watched? All those things are a part of my life now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But look, I don't want to sound like I'm sort of all important, but over the last few years, I've found that in a way, it's my purpose. When
Mm.
I want to get to a situation, as I was just speaking today, I want to get to a situation where people don't need to hear me speak.
Yeah, I was just
Say,
thinking exactly the
yeah,
same thing. I think, yeah, a lot of us have that, where it's like we want to get to a stage where
yeah,
people don't need to hire us because that's the change that we
exactly.
want to see in the world.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I'm sick.
yeah,
I'm sick of going back to companies and say, "Hey, I'm not gonna come and speak again this year, because you clearly haven't addressed things from last year." You
yeah,
know,
exactly. Yeah,
but
yeah.
look, I'm at that age now where I span a few generations. I was in people's front lounges for 25 years, and I have a responsibility. I think everybody out there has a responsibility when they're in the media, whether that to use that profile for good.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. So I'm just doing my little bit, along with other people, and yourself included, just to I've seen too many people, too many friends have gone down that dark avenue,
Mm.
and have never come back. And
Yeah.
that I want to live in a world where nobody feels that way.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Can we kind of talk from the other side? So you were talking about this sense of basically isolating yourself and
Yeah.
feeling like a burden, and that's like that happens to me on occasion as well. You know, let's just tell it as it is. And
Mm.
when I'm feeling lonely, you kind of
Mm.
go into this spiral then, and you're like, I
Of
can't reach
course.
out to people. And it's not that I feel like I'd be a burden. It's that you don't really know how to ask for help.
No.
So from the other side, from the friends of people who might be
Yeah.
going through something like this, what can they do to support?
You know, that's the most asked question.
Mm.
And all I say to people, parents out there, it's the same answer. Anybody is just try to be the best listener you can be,
Mm.
because the art of a good counselor is somebody that listens
Yeah.
and doesn't try to direct you until you want to be directed. You get
Yeah.
so many people say, "Oh, well, this is what I do, Brent." I say, well, don't you think I've heard that before?
Yeah.
Don't you think that, "Oh, get out for a walk, Brent. Fresh air, nature."
Yeah.
I get it, guys. And
Mm.
it's the same as this whole revolution, the wellness revolution that I call it. That's
Yeah.
great. That's great. But wellness to me, it's the mind that drives the body, not the other way around. I keep
Yeah.
telling people, this wellness, which is great, that employs a lot of people, but wellness from the physical side can be anything from meditation to yoga to living a better life, all that. I get all that. I get
Mm.
all that. But it's not quite as simple as that when you delve over into the mental health wellness side of that, because it can't be seen, as you said before. We don't know. I don't know what's going on behind your eyes now. Neither do
Yeah.
you with me. Neither
Mm.
do we do. But there's certain things we can do, and the takeaways is to bring that into the real world, like connections or whatever like that. We can make connections, but then again, it's making the correct connections, as you say. But the best bit of advice is just show you care. I've never met anybody like me in the mental health world that hasn't appreciated somebody caring for them.
Mm.
They
Yeah. Yeah.
may shun you away for a while, and please don't feel that you have to persist. There's people come up and say, "Oh, I'm asking them every day." Well, that can get
Mm.
annoying too, like anything. If somebody's saying,
Yes.
"Hey, I'm okay, I'm okay." Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, but are you really? No, no,
Mm.
no. All you can say is, look, the message I give to parents out there, or to company CEOs and that, I said, if you create a culture with people that you love and care about, and you just say a couple of things to them, just say, look, if anything gets you down, we all get like that sometimes. But
Mm.
just know that I'm here to support and care for you. I'm here 24/7. If you've got to ring me at 2 in the morning, or whatever, and just have a chat, know that I'm doing this because I care for you.
Mm.
And I may not get it all right. People don't expect people are going to get it right all the time.
Yeah.
But that kind of empathy goes a long way, as opposed to somebody saying to you, "Oh, just snap out of it, Brent. Snap out of it." You know, what good does that do? That just puts you further down the mire.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you think, I can't snap out of it, man. Don't you think I want to?
Yeah.
Talk about stating the obvious when people
Yeah.
say,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, go for a walk or go for a swim. I find that's great. Go to the gym.
Yeah.
I, oh, will you just leave me alone? That's what
Mm.
causes the loneliness, is
Yeah.
misunderstanding.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's judgment, judging ourselves. Why can't I
And
get
you're pushing
better?
away.
Yeah.
And then people get so egotistical about friendship. Oh, I'm there for you. I'm there for you. I think
Mm.
it's not about you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not about you. It's about the feelings you can transfer back to the other person, to say that
Yeah.
they're cared for, and they're held in the palm of their hand. And
Mm.
that's all you can do sometimes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
okay to have the conversations. If you think somebody is going to the extent of talking about self-harm and that, yes, you can ask them now directly. You're not thinking about doing anything stupid, Brent, or anything like that. And if they
Mm.
say, well, yes, I have been on occasion, just the answer to that is, hey, don't you think we need to get you a bit of help? And I'll come with you.
Yeah.
Like, I care about you and I support you, and I have my bad days too, and let's go together. And let's go
Mm.
to the manager's office together, or let's go to the doctor together, or let's
Mm.
talk to your mum or your dad together. And just, that's what this whole, we'll get on to in a minute, the whole elephant in the room. It's just, allowing people to be more confident
Yeah.
in opening up. So they knock on their parents' door and say, "Mum, I'm being bullied at school and it's affecting me," and their
Yeah.
mother to listen to and say, "Hey, that must be really awful.
Yeah.
That feeling must be really awful, and you must be lonely. Let's see if we can sort this."
Mm.
That's sometimes that's
That's all you need.
yeah,
Someone to
that's all you
listen and
need
to
sometimes.
understand. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
and say, don't try to judge them. Don't try to put them what works for you, because no one mental health approach for me in my life has ever worked in isolation. So you've got to use a lot of things, a lot of
Mm.
tools at your disposal to move yourself forward. And one of those is listening. One of those is talking. Like I know of certain friends that I've had to say, look, just come around and keep me safe. They all get panicked or something over occasions. Oh, what do I have to do? I say, you don't have to do anything.
Mm.
Just your presence there is soothing.
Mm.
Just having someone there that you're safe and you're not going to do something irrational,
Yeah.
and that's sometimes enough. And
Yeah.
I know, but you see, that's where I'm at an advantage, because I know who to ring now. When I get in a bit of trouble, and just say, "Hey, look, I think I need to come and see you tomorrow,"
Yeah.
and they'll say, "What's wrong, Brent?" And I say, I've tipped over the edge a bit, and
Mm.
I'm a bit scared, or I've gone into being isolating myself, and that.
Yeah.
See, COVID was really good in a lot of ways, because it brought us back to connection of care,
Yeah.
but we've lost it again.
Yeah.
We've lost it again. All these people that were offering to go down and see the neighbours, or offering to mow their lawns, or offering to go and do the grocery for elderly people, or support even people going out on the street when there's a funeral down the road and show us support. We've gone back to our busy ways again, where other people don't care.
Mm.
Some loneliness is an epidemic in this country, and it's a killer
Yeah.
for old people down the country or whatever like that. I talk to a lot of old people, and they say, "Brent, where can we talk to anybody?"
Mm.
They go down to the supermarkets or whatever, and they're shuffled along the fast. They don't want to. They're not going down there to buy veggies. They're just going down to share 5 minutes
Yep.
conversation with
Yeah.
someone about
To
their
have
dog, or you know,
some human interaction.
yeah, human interaction.
Mm.
So
Mm.
that's the first thing I say to people: make connections every day
Yeah.
of your life. Make new connections. Same as when people are planning for retirement. Make those connections early, because suddenly you might be used to going into work on a Friday. Suddenly on a Monday, that's not there.
Yeah.
And that was like that with COVID. People
Yeah.
loved COVID for the first couple of months. Great, but work balance, life balance, wellness, meditating every day, walking the dog, fantastic, great. Roll on 6 months. Oh, Brent, now I'm sick. Oh, geez, get me
Yeah.
back to
Yeah.
the office. I'm sick of the sight of that dog. Now I'm sick of
Yeah.
I'm sick of the back garden. So we did a full circle, but certainly if there was a full circle. In one of the beautiful things about Ireland, when I first come over, I took a job delivering drinks to inner city areas,
Mm.
because I always had to work. And it was at Coman's, out in Belgard Road, and it was just a teller centre out there. That was it.
Yeah.
But what I saw from these inner city communities, that I just saw real warmth.
Mm.
Like people, random acts of kindness to elderly people in the neighbourhood, and I just thought, these are supposed to be kind of areas with a not so great reputation, and yet
Yeah.
the community care and the community spirit was something that really warmed to me. And I thought, these
Mm.
people are wonderful, how they
Yeah.
care about each other, and they care about generations of families that have grown up. And yes, they were some poverty areas, and that, yes, I know they were, but there was love, and there was warmth, and there was camaraderie, and there was community spirit. And somewhere along the way we lost that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
Yeah.
lost it.
I think it's like what you're saying, community is so important.
Yeah.
I'd love to touch on this idea of asking for help and the toolbox that someone maybe can make proactively for themselves, so that when things do get bad, they know what to do, they know who they can call, they know who to reach out to. How would you say people can go about doing that?
Well, I think you've got to put a bit of work into it, and you've got to see
Mm.
what works for you. And
Yeah.
I the few takeaways in that is I have a list that I have to start doing, and I just quickly go through it. The first is plays a huge role in the workplace, is you've got to manage stress better.
Yeah.
Stress is a really worrying aspect, because stress then, of course, rolls to anxiety, and anxiety then rolls into depression. So when people talk about having mental illness or mental health, I don't see many people with just one,
Yeah.
because I know mine started with anxiety, then it rolled into depression, because if you have anxiety for a protracted period of time, it's going to turn into depression, because you're sick of being anxious all the time.
Yeah.
And then we move it further down. So we're all on that sort of, I suppose, that scale somewhere. We're all suffering from anxiety, depression at a level.
Yeah.
It just, people, A, they just don't realize, or B, it just doesn't play a part. But I say to people when I'm out talking, I say, hey, it's coming. And they look at me, and I say, what's coming, Brent? Like Armageddon or whatever. I say, it's coming.
Yeah.
At some
Yeah.
stage in your life, you are going to need to know where your resource box is. So
Yeah.
please have that ready to go
Yes. Yeah.
before the incident,
Yeah.
because that's the one learnings that's the most important for me. I never had that toolbox. All those years, I didn't know what to do,
Yeah.
just despite buying that book, but in those days books were just about affirmations and,
Yeah.
but so learn to manage stress, learn to see acute stress in the workplace as a friend, as something that is coursing the adrenaline through your body, but it's actually gearing up for the challenge. And that's been the one big change in sport, because now rugby players and top footballers and top sports people use that stress and say, hey, that's just getting me up, getting me ready for the challenge. We're facing the All Blacks. Well, that's not so much of a challenge now for the Irish, but that had said before, they would have been scared.
Yeah.
Oh God, it's nerves. But try to channel it to say, okay, well, if you've got to make a public talk, or you've got to go for a job interview, or you've got to make a presentation of work, start saying, hey, I'm up for this, and use your stress in a positive way. Now, chronic stress is a bit different, because we all understand that acute stress, and then you've given the presentation, you've got a standing ovation, all is well in the world.
Yeah.
When chronic stress comes in for a period of time, then you've got to also look at that, and you've got to go back. My biggest advice on that is go back to the worst case scenario and say, can I handle that, and
Yeah.
work back. So say, can I handle that if I lose my job or something? And when you think about it, apart from a few things in life, and even then, you've got to address how you would handle it. You've got to say, okay, might I get another job? Yes, you might. Might I get a job I like better? Yes, I might. All those things. So you go back, and that's a way of managing chronic stress. And also, then my advice is to people that work in those professions like nursing or teaching or whatever, go back to the core values of what it intrinsically feels like you to ever start that profession. What made you get into nursing? What made you get into teaching? What made you get into PR or to management? It's because at some core, you loved what you did. You loved what you did. And change that way of thinking, in the sense that, and love every moment of that, if that makes sense. I heard a woman speak there a while ago out, and she just said she turned her mind around. She hated doing the dishes, and she got to a stage where she said, no, actually, I'm going to enjoy the process. I'm going to enjoy the warm water in my hands. I'm going to enjoy the fact that the dishes are sparkling clean, and I'm going to enjoy putting them away. For that moment, I'm going to enjoy it. So try to turn that round and say, okay, I got into nursing because I love it, because I love making people well, and that's the reason why I did it. And that will help with chronic stress. That's not to say that everybody, you've got to be brave enough to go to your bosses or whatever and say, hey, you've asked me to work 7 nights a week and I'm burnt out, and you've got to be brave enough to say, look, you've got to have work balance and stuff like that. We all know that. So that's the stress. The next one is try to achieve something every day. I heard another guy talk. If you go on YouTube, there's a colonel talks about change the world by making your bed every day, and he's right.
Yes. Yeah.
Because when you add up all those little achievements in a day, you can come back, and even the worst day, and say, yeah, it was a bad day, but look what I achieved along the way. So I do that. I'm not great at meditation, but I try to ground myself when I wake up most days and just say, look, put it to gratitude and say, look, grateful for being here, and it's another day God has given me, and hopefully it'll be a good day. And just before I rush about the day, going and see, we're creatures of habit. I could probably tell you, you probably get up at the same time, you probably have the same breakfast, you probably have the shower, the same thing. You know, and you know, sometimes it's about changing that around a bit. You know, maybe get up before work and go for a walk or something, or go for a different direction for a walk, or take a different route into work, or you know, so that they see different things. So it's just about shaking it up a bit, and then just start your day off and say, look, you know, okay, today's going to be a good day. Connections we've talked about, because that's the most important thing, is continue connections at work, make new connections, you know, smile at people, you know, empathy and simple. See, it's not rocket science. You know, feed off other people, feed off the feel good factor, because that you give to other people that give back. We all like being seen. Well, there's not many people that don't like being seen as kind, you know. So sometimes when you give something to someone, you feel good about it, you know. If it's a card, or it's remembering someone's birthday, if it's a smile at the supermarket, or if it's a couple of euros to someone that's homeless or whatever, you get a kick out of feeling good. You know, and people don't do that. They go about their selfish ways, and they say, hold on. I say to them, look, you know, just be, you know, when you're going home from work and you're stressed and you're in the car and you're road raging, and, you know, just take your time and listen to the radio, or put on a song or something like that, and just say, hey, you know, I'll get back at some stage. You see these people passing you out and that, and I said, they're only going to get home like 30 seconds quicker. You know, and I think just relax into it and enjoy enjoy the journey. You know, have friends that you can call on, and for different reasons. And you know, all friends will bring something different to the party. Sometimes you need a friend that's going to tell it to you straight and say, you know, I need you to pick you up and take you out on a night to the movies or something like that. Other friends might be the person that just, you know, call around and have a cup of tea with a cup of coffee, and, you know, you unearth your problems, and, you know, you sit under a rug or something, watch a movie or something, if you're a woman, or your wine club. So have different friends that can add something different. You know, and that's the same in work, in a work situation. You know, it shouldn't be just the mother hen or the father figure type you go to in a work situation. You should feel in your work culture that you can go to anybody. And just say, hey, you know,
that's connect. It's about those kind of coming back to this idea of connection.
Connection. The most important thing you can have in your life is connection, because that starves off loneliness. I'm just thinking, what else? Empathetic and enjoy. Oh yes, the other thing is our greatest asset is time, because that's the one thing we don't know that we have. And I always ask people to do an exercise when I'm out talking. I say, are you making the best use of your time right now? And you'll probably find people aren't. You know, so put down what you believe is your best use of time, and then on the other side put down actually where are you spending most of your time, and you'll find for most people it's different. So are you really, you know, do you really have a good work-life balance? Most people say no, and yet that's the most important thing to them. And yet they say, oh, you know, Brent, the commute, and geez, I was 60 hours in the office last week and didn't get to see my son play the GA match. And, you know, like that is what disrupts a happy workplace more than anything. And feel right to ask for that balance, you know, whatever that looks like.
I think for individuals, it's about standing up for yourself and knowing your boundaries and speaking up on behalf of yourself.
Knowing your boundaries, exactly. That's key advice. Just say no. You've asked me to come in every Saturday, you know, for the last month, and I need to spend time doing something I enjoy. And you know, and whether that's making time, if somebody is working from home, even the office, you know, every hour or something, get up and go for a little walk or something. Break the kind of comfort zone that you're used to, and maybe go out and have a conversation with someone, or grab a drink of water, or do something to get you away from that sort of 8-hour shift where you're just effectively shackled to a desk. And you know, and there's a lot of businesses out there. I've spoken to a lot of businesses where I see people just on the assembly line or whatever, something's
Yeah.
coming in front of them, then they've got to change position after every 3 or 4 hours. No social interaction, no social communion. I asked some people, where do you go for lunch or something? Sit out in the car and have my sandwich.
Wow.
Man, you know,
Mm.
like, and I said, if you just stood up for yourself and said, look, can we have a dartboard, or can we have a, I don't know what that is, but you're right, for people
It's
to
just some
insist.
conversation.
Yeah, because a
Yeah.
happy workplace is a productive workplace. Here's the kicker for
Exactly.
me. If we know, this is the one thing that always surprises me the most in businesses. If we know that the 3 biggest costs in business today, for any business across the world, is an absentee workforce, people taking days off work, obviously. It's in lack of productivity when they're in the workplace, so not achieving, sales figures or manufacturing figures. And the third one is the costs involved in training employees that then move on a couple of months later to a new job. So all the costs. If they are the 3 biggest costs, then the 3 biggest reasons for those costs are mental health.
Yeah.
And yet the lowest spend and budgets from companies is around mental health.
Mm.
So what am I missing? I always keep
Yeah.
saying, what am I missing here?
Yeah. It's the knowing,
yeah,
doing, and not seeing maybe the direct link between how employees
yeah.
are treated and the bottom line, seeing that direct link of this is a cost to the business and this is how you solve it.
This is how you solve it, but they don't want to know. As
Yeah.
one CEO I said, be honest with me. And I said, why aren't you addressing this? And he said, Brent, I'm scared of opening Pandora's box. I said, there you
Okay.
go. At least he was honest.
Yeah.
And he said, because he said, one, he made something really relevant. He said, who do I go and see? And that's another thing you need to put in place for upper management and CEOs and that. Who do they go to see? And also the fact that people are scared when they're tipping around mental health. So it's not about destigmatization at all. That word is not used in my vocabulary. It's not about wellness as well. It's about a greater understanding or awareness of mental health, so that when people get more understanding how irrational it is and how difficult it is and all these things, then we're getting somewhere. At the moment, we keep reverting back to these words like, oh, well, Brent Pope's doing a great job of destigmatizing mental health in the workplace. I said, no, it's nothing to do with that destigmatize. Haven't we come part? Isn't that a word that used around racism or homophobia 30 years ago? No, it should be, I'm creating more understanding or awareness that people have to look after their mental health, because mental health is just a fact of everybody's life.
I was going to say, it's something that everybody has.
Yeah. And everybody has it at different levels, and let's acknowledge it for what it is. That it's difficult to see, that we don't know what's going on in anybody's life at any one stage. They don't even know themselves.
Yeah.
But
it's about being more human. It's about being more human and accepting who we are.
So I suggest to a lot of management, I said, how about this for conversation? It's what I tell parents as well. How about having the same conversation you would have with a sibling or whatever, or a friend or whatever, that to your employees? Because I think that empowers people. If they know that they're in a place of care and support, they will at least know that somebody up the chain has spent enough time to think about them. To say, look, how more powerful would it be than for somebody to come down and address the employees at the start of a year, like all good captains or coaches of rugby teams do, say, look, I'm not going to get it right the whole time. I have my own mental health difficulties from time to time, and I suffer from stress and burnout like all you guys, and put yourself in a vulnerable spot and say, but know this, that I care about you all individually and collectively as a group, and we're going to try to form a culture here whereby I applaud people asking for help. And you'll be welcome in any office, including mine, to talk about and we'll try to get you the help that you can. We can't promise we'll get everything right all of the time. Nobody can. But that is so much more empowering for people that suffer in silence, rather than come and say, okay, well, guys, we've a new coffee machine in, and we've free yoga lessons for everybody in the no, because people don't feel cared for, they don't feel nurtured. And that's the culture we need to change. And people don't want to hear that, because they think that they've got their culture all right. Well, if that's the case, then they wouldn't have any problems with a happy work environment, because a happy work environment is all about connections, as you know. It's all about how you get on with your work colleagues, how you get on with the bosses, how you get on with if you're all in the one direction about where you want to go as a business. All those things are business 101. Yet the
Yeah.
mental health aspect of it is left out.
Yeah. Exactly. Mm. We've
But
covered so much ground, absolutely
yes,
so much.
sorry,
There's
too
so much
much.
to get in. No, it's brilliant, because I think people listening today, if they can recognize that in themselves, if they can recognize that in other people, then I think it's going to change people. You know, they're going to take action based on this. Brent, the question I ask everyone who comes on the podcast: what does being happier at work mean to you?
Yeah, it's a good question, because I probably haven't had a 9 to 5 in years. So but to me, the single word that keeps coming up as far as happiness and work is find your purpose. I
Yeah.
don't know what that is for people, but that's why I say to people that if you go back to the roots of why you're in that job, uh, for most of us, there's a reason, and for most of it, yes, I know that people that say, "Oh God," but if they don't have purpose, then they're gonna. I'm not saying they're gonna hate their job. That's maybe a bit strong, but they're soon going to run out of energy, and they're still going to look for shortcuts to spend less time at work if it's not a happy place to be. So
Yeah.
people should be able to march into the workplace and say, "Hey, I'm invigorated. I'm enthusiastic. I like the way where the company is going. I like where I'm going in the workplace. Uh, I get time to that work-life balance, and my purpose is that I'm giving back to this company because they're they're saving trees, or they're doing something about the carbon footprint. Or I think those things are easier to get purpose from, because it's like my purpose with mental health, because you feel at a level you're saving lives. It doesn't have to be like that. Your purpose could be like helping people learn. Your purpose as a teacher could be, look, if I've got this one kid to pass exams when nobody gave him, that's your purpose. That's
Yeah.
why you're there. That's the enjoyment you get out of life. I always get people to go back and to watch those YouTube feeds of Undercover Boss and all those
Oh,
things.
yeah.
And you know what always resonates with me the most? It's not about the money they give them at the end. It's about saying, you are seen, you are
Yeah.
heard, or I appreciate the work you've done. And here's a trip to Disneyland, or here's something like that, or here's something for your family. It's never about that. It's always about what breaks them down emotionally. Is that
Like, you are important here.
I've been seeing, and there was a great, I don't know if it's still up there, but there was a great YouTube I saw years ago about the guy in South Africa. He worked in the toilets in the airport. He was a coloured man, and he worked in the toilets. And he had a notice up on the toilets: these are the cleanest toilets in the world. And that
Yeah.
was his purpose.
Yeah.
And even
Yeah.
though to other people, he had this job job that other people would have hated. He took so much purpose in having this, the cleanest, and people come in, all the towels were immaculate, and people come around from the world and said, "Hey, great job."
Yeah.
And so his purpose. There's another lovely little book. Well, I think that Tom Hanks, Starbucks, forget the pick. Tom Hanks just got the right. But it's an interesting, if people want a really easy holiday read, I'll put a link up to you with it. But it's just a book
Brilliant.
about somebody that was really successful, and then through the jigs and around his life, I won't give it away, found the real purpose in his life.
Okay.
And it's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
beautiful story. It's a true
Yeah.
story. About people that reconnected with family, with ex-wife. Won't give too much away, but finally at an older age said, this is what living happy means to me.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is what working in an environment, in a happy environment, and it had nothing to do with money, nothing to do with all those other trappings of success. It was about how that job made them feel in here.
Yeah.
And all the successful rugby coaches and that I've worked with have always tried to give you a feeling in here about what you're doing, so
Yeah.
that you're all in one, moving in the same direction, and
Yeah.
everybody buys into the vision, everybody buys into the enjoyment of the camaraderie and stuff like that. And and what means success for them isn't about titles or awards. It's about the journey in your job. So success shouldn't be linked in the workplace to, topping the sales figures. It should be the feeling you get of achievement
Yeah.
of topping those, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Yeah.
look,
Yeah.
I just want to mention the Elephant in the Room project before I go, because
Yes. We
it's
haven't
just,
even touched on that yet, but I'll put links down in the show notes and people can find out
yeah.
more. Yeah. Tell us a little bit more about
No,
it.
just briefly, I love art. Art means a lot in my life, and especially art from what I call outsider artists, and it's a kind of a niche group that have to do art. They have to do it, and the art comes from mental health organisations, hospitals, prisons. Street artists, home. I love that art because it has a story, and again, they're doing the art for in here. It's art uncooked by culture, which is a lovely description. So I was down in Kilkenny a few years ago, and I saw these wonderful cats, all painted up. And I thought, oh, they're great,
Yeah.
in hotel foyers and business. And I asked someone about them, and he said that was a fundraising exercise. We had these cats decorated by local artists or whatever, and we raised a bit of money for whether it was the GAA or something. Anyway, so that just got me thinking. I said, can you put me on the company that does that? And they do this around the world. You've probably seen over the years cows that were done in Ireland a few years ago.
Yeah.
Painted by celebrities and sold. So I thought, what can I do to create a kind of a movement of awareness around mental health so people get it? And then somebody, sort of light bulb moment, a guy said to me one time, I was talking about mental health, and he said, from a business side of it, he said, we don't like to talk about the old elephant in the room, do we, Brent? And I said, what's the elephant in the room for you? He said, he couldn't even say mental health. He said,
Yeah.
And I said, is that so much of an elephant in the room? He said, oh yeah. And I said, everybody has an elephant. Doesn't matter whether it's body dysmorphia, doesn't matter whether it's anorexia, doesn't matter whether it's lack of confidence, whether it's Asperger's, whether it's autism, it doesn't matter. But it all affects our mental health. So I thought then, that's it, an elephant. So I went off to the Philippines, and I got a mold made for this cute little baby elephant. I bought in, with the help of Corn Market and Fidelity Investments, I bought in, I think, 30 elephants, and I've had 20 of them decorated by these fabulous artists who have been so generous with their time to what their elephants feel like for them, I've also had Adam Clayton from U2's come on board. He's doing an elephant. PJ Gallagher, Charlie Bird did one me. Wow. So I'm going to be tapping all the celebrities I know. Done one for the Munster Rugby Union, one for the Irish Rugby Union.
Yeah.
Then they'll all be auctioned for the Samaritans, for fundraising for the Samaritans. But what I hope is that companies take an elephant and they brand them up with their own colours.
Oh yeah.
And it comes on a plinth saying that Vodafone or whatever, or Irish Rail or whatever, joining a movement where they want to encourage people speaking out about mental health in the workplace. So I've had a huge buy-in because I want to start to create a movement of awareness, and it's not just a fundraising arm. It's more about that I want to see these elephants in every classroom to boardroom to around Ireland, because when people come into a workplace and they see an elephant there, that's just a way of encouraging the conversation, so that they know straight away that they're in a place of care, that somebody has thought about them, that somebody just hasn't thought that putting a coffee machine in the social room or beanbags is enough, that somebody has actually gone ahead and said, okay, we are trying to change this culture. Might be slowly, but at least they're changing. So I want the elephant to become a symbol of hope for people like me that have suffered in silence for too long. So it's a symbol of hope. And so I'm hoping to get them out to schools and to I've had a couple of inquiries from Children's Hospital to get all painted up with teddy bears and to take them to get that. And I'm also asking young people, just if they see them there in Stephen's Green at the moment, just to get a photo with them and kind of join the movement.
Post on social media. And I love the concept because it's quite literally talking about the elephant in the room. The elephant is there, and it sparks a conversation about, well, what's that? Why do you have that elephant there?
Exactly. And especially for younger people, they love them. And someone even suggested the other day in a sporting terms, they said they had lost a a couple of their players had taken their own life over the last couple of years, and they said, wouldn't it be nice just for the players to pat the elephant when they're running out in the pitch? It's kind of is a symbol of understanding, and I thought that was a wonderful emotional tie into, because I think, you know, everybody, as I said, everybody knows when you talk about the elephant in the room that it's something difficult. You know, whether it's a breakdown of a relationship, I don't want to go there. I don't want to talk about the elephant in the room, Brent. You know, it's something that bugs you, and it's something you should get off your chest. So I'm encouraging. We've had inquiries from Australia, we've inquiries from the UK and Spain, and so I want this elephant to go worldwide. You know, so I'm passionate about it, and I just want people to get behind it and, you know, come on board as even just supporters. They don't have to necessarily, you know, so I'm trying to get little smaller ones made that can go into smaller offices or whatever, just so it's a symbol, but a symbol of hope. And then hopefully my job is 3/4 done.
This is it.
I'm 60 now, so I'm running out of energy. But look, thanks for giving me the platform. I know you can see how enthused I am about speaking about mental health, because it means a lot to my life and others, and, you know, hopefully I continue to do what I can do, and other people join suit, and so that it becomes a place that people can confidently stride into work and say, hey, I'm going to get this sorted. And I'm going to get my life back on track, and I want to work in a happy work environment, and this is what it means. If this is what it means opening up, then fine, I'm all for it.
And thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and your insights and your tools and everything. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you today, so really appreciate that.
You'll have to go and edit now the next 3 days.